I just gave her all the and she wants some carrots. She opened it, she froze like not she wanted one. And then she's like some people. And then they just try to see what it came her.
Now we're going to do some slightly different things as I just get myself going here. Not very much the case of the Friday morning. Alright, now posted in the classroom. So we're here. Right now, I thought about you guys with your pathway examination. Again, that always sounds French to me when I say it like that. Is that maybe you want some more sort of feed forward info about pathways and what it is that we're sort of looking for, because it's slightly different, okay? And even us as economics teachers are still getting our head around how different the new syllabus actually is. And there's a lot of conversation online about it. And one of the teachers who's been in touch with me several times has said that part of what they feel at the moment is that they feel that they're teaching writing skills as opposed to teaching economics, which is, you know, a fair call in some regards, okay? Right, so what is it that you're going to be looking at? Now, what I've also done here in this, in this doc here, is I put the actual instructions that are going to appear on your exam. All right, so that you're not surprised. Okay. Do not open the paper till they tell you to. That I'm hoping clear. You understand that. You should have 5-minute reading time. And in the 5-minute, I'm hoping, okay, in the 5 minutes, you're not even allowed to touch your pen. So your pen has to be away. Okay, no pen, no highlighter, no pencil, nothing. Just leave them and just read. Okay. When you are not permitted to use a calculator for this particular paper, all right? Joel was really wanting to. All right. You will have one question to answer because that's what your paper is going to be. Your paper is actually going to be one question long. All right, in the real thing. And again, economics teachers are trying to wrap their heads around that as well. Okay. Your one question, and here's a trap, your one question has a part A and a part B. That's included within the one question. Yeah, so you don't answer part A and think, oh, I'm done. Yeah. Equally, you don't answer just part B and think, oh, I'm done. You need to answer part A and part B. Yeah. So it's going to be a one single sheet of paper. That's all you're going to have for this exam. And on the flip side of it is the question. So it will feel weird. Trust me on this one. What's this? What? Yeah? One sheet of paper? What's that all about? You will need to write on paper that they have in the exam room. You will need to ask for that paper. They may not give it to you straight away. Again, trap for young players. Okay? Because we did have the case last year where they didn't ask and then they got all in a panic at the end of the exam when they saw that other people had got paper and they hadn't. And they'd just written on the exam itself. Tried to jam everything into that. Okay? Doesn't work. Believe me on that one. Yeah, there is a chance about using diagrams because we've developed a couple of models. Right, we have. So you could get asked about them. If you do get asked about them, then they need to be fully labeled and that you need to have references to examples also where appropriate. All right, so if you're defining a term, then you need to include an example to help show your understanding, and I'll show you why in a minute. The maximum number of marks for the paper is 25, which is obviously split between the part A and the part B. All right, so each question, write each part on a separate sheet of paper. So part A on one sheet of paper, part B on another. Yeah, that's a little bit from me. That's an exam technique idea. That's so that you get to the end of your part A's and, you know, oh, I'll just start part B now. No. Another sheet of paper, write your part B. And I know that doesn't sound particularly environmentally friendly. I don't care. Okay. All right. I want you to have the space potentially at the bottom of your part A so that if you have extra time at the end, you might like to go back and add more depth to your part A. Yeah. The marks are allocated as guided. That's a general idea. So one will be 10, one will be 15. So your 15-mark question, we are expecting you to write more than we are expecting you to write in your 10-mark question. Yeah? So what sorts of things can you think of? Well, I just put these down. These are some things you can practice with, define key definitions and examples. The examples is a crucial part of it because you can't get a decent mark without having examples anymore. In the past, you could. Now you just can't. All right, you have to have examples. Explain how a planned economy works, answer 3 economic questions. Explain how a free market economy answers 3 economic questions. Evaluate if a free market is better suited to answer the 3 economic questions. That all sounds familiar. That's very similar to one that you've already done. Explain how economics as a social science is similar to, but different from physical sciences. Again, similar to what things we've done. Explain how the PPC curve can be used to illustrate and explain the economic concepts of economic growth, scarcity, choice, and opportunity cost. Are there any limitations to its use? All right, so you can see quite quickly how these can be at least 10-mark questions, if not 15. All right, as we go through. Explain why both positive and normative statements are important in economic decisions made especially by the government. Again, we've done that one quite recently. Explain the difference between equity and equality, applying them to a possible economic decision that may be made by a government. Again, something that we've done quite recently. With reference to a model, explain the interdependence between economic decision makers interacting and making choices in an economy, households, firms, the governments, the banks, the financial sector, the foreign sector, foreign firms and households. What does that sound like? Sorry? The circular flow model. Yeah. Okay. Explain how economics as a science has evolved over time with reference to at least 2 different schools of thought. Explain how, with examples, how a government might use behavioural economic theories to influence consumer decision making. Again, all these familiar with what we've done. Explain the concept of satisficing. That we did that quite recently. What is it and why it is, in the words of Thanos, inevitable. Yeah, I threw that in. I found that funny, but I'm just looking at Ariane and thinking, right. Every time I say that, I do worry that I'm not going to say it right. Know that, eh? Am I saying it right? Ariane? That's all right? Good. Now, then I thought, so that you see what it is I'm talking about, these are what you're actually being assessed on. Right? These are the key skills. So demonstrating knowledge and understanding of specific content. That's tick. Right? Applying economic concepts and theories to real-world situations. That's a slight modification from the previous syllabus, but tick, we can do that. Analyze how economic information is used effectively in particular contexts. That's quite different, but we can do that. That's about the effectiveness idea. That's the evaluating. Yeah. Examine economic concepts and theories. Use economic concepts and examples to construct and present an argument. Discuss and evaluate economic information and theories. Demonstrate economic synthesis and evaluation of the extension topics. A3 is completely new, essentially. right? That's the skill of writing about economics. All right, that's the one there. Yeah. A4, produce well-structured written material using appropriate economic terminology, concepts, and terminology, theory and terminology. Produce and use diagrams to help explain economic theory, concepts, and real-world issues. That one as well is not new as such, but it has been quite strongly modified. I've left out the calculations because you haven't done those yet. There is another skill set about calculations, yeah, that you'll need to do as well in the future. Okay, so that's what I am assessing you on, right? But it's a pathway exam. It's me seeing how well you write so that I can make a judgment as to whether you would be better off doing HL or SL. But in the end, as you understand, I'm only going to have an opinion. It will be up to you and Miss Amanda as to what you end up deciding, and maybe Mum and Dad. Yeah? And that happens. And a classic example, for those of you who know the Year 13s, you might be aware of a Year 13 called Jonathan. Yeah? He decided that he was going to do HL physics instead of HL economics. Okay? Because he wanted to keep his options open. Great, fantastic, brilliant, okay, all for that. This year, he has realized that for the university courses that he's wanting to do, HL economics is a better approach. So he has now swapped back from HL physics to HL economics, which is, for him at any rate, possible to do. All right, it does mean there's some patching that needs to happen, but that's possible. All right, it's a lot easier potentially with the old syllabus as well to be able to do that. Yeah? So it is still possible even later on in the course, you know, dependent on the other subject obviously as well. The big problem with swapping back and forth is the times, because during HL content, when I'm teaching you HL content, the SL learners technically don't need to be here. Yeah. So when I have big sections of HL work, I'm actually going to tell the SL learners that they can go. Some of them might choose to sit and do their work here, I don't know. Yeah. But what will happen is that you will then have that time to go and work on your HL for your other subjects, to go and do IAs and EEs and all sorts of other things. And that will be quite novel for you. Okay? But it is a time when you get it that you never get back. All right, so you need to make sure that you use it really wisely. Okay, and there are a number of learners who haven't used it wisely in the past, and have, you know, used it to go and have a nap in the hub, and all of a sudden discovered, oh, there was all this work I could have done and didn't do. Right, so I've given you that. That should appear in the classroom. You've all got that? Yep, I've put it into the site as well, so it's there too. So 2 places that you'll be able to find that. Are there any particular questions on that? Does that sound relatively okay? Right, and then it gives you also, as well as the specific learning objectives, it gives you something that you can hang your hat on, all right, and a little bit of prep. Yeah. Right. So, this. And Nearpod. We're going to Nearpod it today. Your code for today, MNRYE. MNRYE, if we could work towards that. I don't know what happens with you all, distance learning people, with regards to the pathway exam. Don't know yet. We've still got a little bit of time because the pathway exam is until the 21st of October. So, but I don't know your timings about coming and staying and obviously quarantining and all of those sorts of things too. I'm assuming someone is in touch with you all, or maybe you can be in touch with the school and talk to the powers that be with regards to what it is that's the plan from you and your family, with regards to timings and quarantines and all of those. The school will have an idea as to what they need to do with regards to pathway exams for you. It might be that it then goes online and you complete it online. That sounds a fair idea, but I don't know. I'm going to wait and find out myself. We keep asking, but we don't necessarily always get the right answer, because there are some learners who do arrive and others who are still away. So that becomes the logistics that we work. All right, but please don't panic. You aren't being forgotten. No. All right. I've got 13 in there at this point. No, 14 now. So there will be a couple others still to join. Now, as normal, the code is up there. All right, top left-hand corner of the screen. So if you do get lost or stuck, you can always jump back to the code. All right. Right, so if I move us on, that would be an idea. Bias. Okay, so the other day we discussed the idea of bounded rationality. We talked about how we could use our rules of thumb. We talked about how all of the imperfect information that we have impacts on our decision making, which means we need to use our shortcut to make a decision and then eventually be happy, satisfied with it, whether it's an optimal decision or not. Usually we say it isn't. We had some examples of bounded rationality, and that was the graphic that we used just to further. It's quite a cool graphic. I quite like that graphic. Very visual. Explains it quite nicely. We also discussed the idea of bounded self-control, and we talked about how we are all in control, and we assume that people are in control, but people will, on occasion, lose control. And they're having that as an understanding means that it's not that they are irrational, it's that's potentially actually a rational thing for them to do. All right. Can an anger nudge work? Yes, it can, and we had some examples. Okay, we talked about how particularly politicians would use it. Okay, they would deliberately make you angry and then suggest what the outcome that they're wanting from you. Yeah, or you could see some situation on the news or online and vote here or send us some money or sign up and be a member or fill in a survey, yeah, expressing your anger, write to your congressman, whatever. Those sorts of ideas are nudges for you using anger as the emotion. We've also talked about this last one, I believe, right at the end. Yeah, the idea of bounded selflessness, the idea that we aren't completely selfish, that in situations of extreme need, we will leap into action, okay? And that isn't irrational, even though it actually seems to be irrational, right? To put yourself in harm's way in order to achieve an outcome. And it's the same sort of situation where, you know, people who have stood up to bullies, people who are joining the protest movements in the States, despite the fact that there's a strong chance that somebody might come along and whack them on the side of the head, yeah? These are people who know that harm's way is there, yeah? But despite that, they are behaving in quite a selfless way. Whereas a traditional, classical approach to economics would suggest that they would all stay at home because it's too dangerous to go out. Yeah, that's the idea. Okay. How does an understanding of bounded selflessness, how does it mean? What does it mean for our decision making? Alex Jones was right about the Bilderberger group. Really? Okay. No. All right. So, sometimes we assume, what if consumers did not behave rationally? Is it just then our understanding, oh, TOK moment, is it our understanding of what rationality means? Now that we have boundedness to our rationality, maybe that's what it is. But if they aren't behaving rationally, then they're not going to fit our models. So maybe we then need to throw out the models or adjust them in line with the thinking about the boundedness of our rationality. What if we didn't have perfect information? Well, we don't have perfect information. So therefore, despite our theories, our laws, all assuming we have got this perfect information, we don't. So we, the consumer, need to make decisions, as you saw, using our mental shortcuts, and that will then help us to make a decision, albeit potentially a suboptimal one. Right. There are limitations to our understandings of consumers. And this is part of what makes behavioral economics and the psychology of it such a fascinating, new-ish idea. Right? Because you can delve into people's brains. And there seems to be an unending supply of new things we discover. And people are doing new experiments, and people are doing all sorts of things, right, to try and figure out how people actually behave. One of the classic ones all those years ago was it the marshmallow one? The sweet one? Did I tell you that one? And you'd give the kids sweets, little kids, right? And then you'd tell them that if they waited, yeah, then they'll get more sweets. Yeah, and it talks about their psychology and how they view the future reward versus the current payoff. Yeah. So there are lots of those sorts of psychological experiments that we can do. You're all familiar possibly with the idea of operant conditioning, which is psychology, it's not economics, right? But parts of the behavior from that do come into play. It's very easy, but the idea of operant conditioning is that you can train people to behave in a particular way. And we know this because you all turn up at 8:40 for your lessons, and then you have lunch at 1 o'clock, and then you have, you're trained to do that. To the extent where I'm guessing when you're at home in the weekend, you might even get hungry at 1 o'clock. Why am I hungry? Because it's lunchtime. Hold on, it's not lunchtime, it's the weekend. Yeah, so even something as simple as operant conditioning, where you're actually trained into a behavior, and people will still work out new ways that they can nudge you because your brain is just that complicated. Right? Is that all right? Yeah. So we go back to that idea there that we saw before, that we aren't the classical view of people. Right? That Homo economist person doesn't exist anymore. That instead we are these people, the ones who are not rational, calculating machines, but they're anxious, they're moralizing, herd-like, reciprocating, image-conscious, and storytelling game theorists. There were some year 11s. The year 11's doing some sort of project or something at the moment. Was it year 10s? I don't know. They're doing some sort of project, and they came to talk to me about game theory and what game theory was and how it worked and all of those, and what did the guy Nash have to do with it. So I talked to them through all of that and then explained possible applications of game theory, etc. And the classical game theory, the prisoner's dilemma, right? All of those aspects of game theory, which were new all the way back in the 70s, right, to the 80s, okay? They're now quite standard, you know? So when you go to university, right, in whatever form or shape that takes, there will be new studies and new science approaches to behavioral economics. There will be new nudge techniques. And you remember I mentioned that there was an article that came out that said that because you are getting to be really smart and media savvy, you are recognizing the nudges for what they are, and you are starting to ignore them. So they're going to have to come up with something new. All right? Okay. So let's have a look. All right, here we go. Now this is actually on the site, so you can see this. This is not just me.
Because to economists, there are multiple stages. You assume people passionate about it.
Is it just me, or are they like all right, understandable?
It's not.
Jake, when it comes to model, or
No? All right. I know what does that button do. There we go. Let's try that. Go back.
can't make the post predict.
Is that okay?
Today, about like people.
All right. Economists assume consumers behave in a certain way, but in actuality, they are what?
Yeah.
Economics. Okay. So motion to make. I have a old this more some now gen the near it's a harder last decade because both either what it is what not site G to mark the public or in the ash the big because they you hear court coming just in the exact level of course no cases ash in the fall product protected by that so bam true automatic also the foundation limits to make build my people think that wow for
Yeah, sorry. That link.
the price the well by the means that create or have to lock in for this problem class cannot it's odd and have a section that go and go that doesn't other times fit. Especially the fifth like the true the break the level when you when the art when the same time like it when pick up all
You want me to try restarting it, seeing if that will work? Yep. Yeah. Yes, but then I won't have the questions. But then I still don't know if it will use a robot thing. Right, okay. Well, we'll
Still, I think what is making it difficult.
In our top is enough that they were completely about all reacting. No, sure, you should ask a friend. They and that like I do. Listen to you on right in the green in the or like just his sensing and they're
not really working the way I thought it would work. Okay.
If you give me 39 seconds, I'm going to show you.
Sorry. All right. What I'll do is I will shrink this away. That. And I will open this. That. And we'll see if this works any better. There's a chance it won't, but there's also a chance that it will.
I'm Jacob Griffith. When economists make their models, they generally
There we
assume
go.
that people are rational and predictable.
but when we look at actual human beings, it turns out that people are impulsive, short-sighted, and a lot of times just plain irrational. Look, balloons.
Today we're talking about behavioral economics and how people actually make decisions. Behavioral economics is a subfield of economics that focuses on psychological, social, and emotional factors that influence decision making. That's not necessarily new. In fact, our old buddy Adam Smith discussed it in the theory of moral sentiments in 1759. But generations of economists chose to ignore many irrational elements of decision making since it makes it harder to predict human behavior. But in the last few decades, behavioral economics has made a comeback. Several Nobel Prizes have been awarded to researchers that blend economics and psychology. Behavioral economics is being applied to more and more fields like marketing, finance, political science, and public policy. Now, it's important to mention that irrational human behavior doesn't negate everything we've learned here in Crash Course Economics. It just adds another layer of complexity, which is exactly what we love at Crash Course. Now, in most cases, people are irrational. When the price falls for a product, people have a tendency to buy more of that product, so the law of demand holds true. But economists also accept that there's bounded rationality. Limits on information, time, and abilities might prevent people from seeking out the best possible outcome. For example, if the price of ice cream is really low, consumers might not buy more. In fact, they might buy less if they think that that low price means that ice cream is affordable. Now, if that happens, then the law of demand doesn't hold true, which creates a serious problem in classical economics. I mean, it's the law of demand. You can't have a situation that breaks the law and still call it a law, right? That doesn't happen in other disciplines like physics. The Newtonian laws of physics, like gravity, hold true most of the time. They break down at the quantum level. They explain the orbits of planets, but they have a harder time explaining the orbits of electrons. And it's the same in economics. Classical economic theory explained the big picture stuff pretty well. There's still a lot of things about individual decision making that we just don't hold them.
In our ice cream example, one of the problems is lack of information. Classical economics assumes that consumers have perfect information when making choices. That is, they know or at least can quickly access information about prices and quality. But in reality, they often don't. Sure, the consumer can ask around or call their friends to see if they've tried that type of ice cream, but they're probably not going to do that. In this situation, consumers may act on the limited information they have, a suspiciously low price, which means either the ice cream is a great deal or it tastes like mayonnaise. You just don't know. Prices do send a lot of signals, and there's even science on how prices change perception. A study in California analyzed the brains of people taste testing a variety of red wines. The researchers gave participants fake prices and scanned their brains to determine the level of enjoyment. The results were surprising. When they thought the price was higher, they actually liked the wine more. This held true even when the subjects were given the exact same wine, but were told it was a different, higher priced wine. The researchers said, contrary to the basic assumptions of economics, marketing actions can successfully affect experience pleasantness by manipulating non-intrinsic attributes of goods. So once you've got a palatable Pinot Noir, you might be able to raise the price and actually raise the demand. All you have to do is change perception. The idea that perceptions and passions influence our actions also applies in finance. Many economists used to believe that assets, like stocks and real estate, would stay at or near their real value because cold, calculating investors would buy undervalued assets and sell overvalued assets. But that doesn't explain bubbles. In real life, investors aren't always cold and calculating. They can get worked up and they're rational sometimes. This helps explain bubbles, from the Dutch tulip mania of the 17th century to the 2008 financial crisis. Investors became irrationally exuberant and were driven not by logic, but by what economist John Maynard Keynes once called animal spirit. So behavioral economics doesn't blow up traditional economic theory. It just seeks to understand when and why people behave differently than economic models would suggest. Let's go to the thought.
One of the most popular experiments in behavioral economics is called the ultimatum game. In this experiment, two players decide how to share a specific sum of money, let's say $100. The first player is given all the money and then is asked to propose a way of splitting it with the second player. Now, if the second player accepts the deal, both players get to keep the money. But if the second player refuses, nobody gets to keep the money. When the first player offers to split the money 50-50, the second player almost always accepts. But what happens when the first player offers an unequal split, like 80-20? Would you accept that offer? Well, it turns out the less equal offers are often rejected. Now, that doesn't seem surprising, but it directly contradicts classical economic theory. It's irrational. The rational choice would be for the second player to accept any offer, even if it's only $1. And after all, $1 is better than nothing. But human behavior is not motivated solely by gain. It's also shaped by complex ideas like fairness, injustice, and even revenge. The ultimatum game shows that people aren't always as predictable as many economists like to suggest. If people were entirely rational, they would consistently make the same decision given identical options. But sometimes people's preferences are dependent on how the options are presented. Psychologists call this type of cognitive bias the framing effect. I mean, would you rather eat beef that's 75% fat-free or 25% fat? Would you rather enter a raffle that claims 1 out of every 1,000 players as a winner, or a raffle that points out that there's going to be 999 losers? Would you support a law that's called the Improve Our Schools Act, or one that's named the Raise Our Taxes Act? Each of these scenarios can be framed in ways that influence your decision. Classical economics argues that framing should have relatively little effect on decision-making because most people are rational and intelligent. In the real world, people can be pretty irrational.
Thanks, Bob. So businesses have known about the psychology of decision-making for a long time. For example, a gym might break down its membership fee and advertise it only costs $1 a day, which seems way more affordable than $365 a year. And a TV priced at $499.99 seems like a better deal than one priced at $500. This is called psychological pricing. It can make people feel like they're getting a good deal. Interestingly, high-end retailers sometimes do the opposite. They set their prices at whole dollars, basically signaling their goods are of a higher quality than you might see at a discount store. Behavioral economists also like to talk about something called nudge theory. Nudges encourage people to act a certain way without actually changing the choices that are available to them. Fighting childhood obesity is a priority in many countries, and policymakers have suggested a whole range of solutions, everything from banning soda in schools to running media campaigns promoting healthy eating. Behavioral economists approached the problem a little differently. They wanted to see if they could get children to eat healthier by rearranging school cafeterias. They put healthier food like fruits and vegetables on eye-level shelves and less healthy foods like desserts in less convenient places. Classical economic theory suggests that this idea wouldn't work since rational people would pick the brownie. But it turns out students chose the healthier foods. Nudge theory works, and it's changing how we implement public policy. There are some issues that can be addressed best with the right type of nudge.
Let's talk about something else behavioral economists look at, risk. Let's say someone offered you 2 sealed envelopes. One has $100 and one has no dollars. You can choose an envelope, or you can take $50 cash right now. So do you take the $50, or what about $49? Now, this is unlikely to happen to you in real life, but the exercise is about your attitude towards risk. Since there's a 50-50 chance of getting $100 or nothing, the expected return, or the average of the possible outcomes, is $50. If you're willing to accept $50 cash to abandon the envelope, then you're risk neutral. But if you accept less than $50 just to avoid walking away with nothing, then you're risk averse. Behavioral economists have done a lot of studies about risk, in particular loss aversion, the idea that people strongly want to avoid losing. Studies show that in general, losses are more painful than gains are pleasurable. So people might choose a safe course of action, even though that's not the most logical choice. Let's say we flip a coin, and if it's heads, I give you $100, but if it's tails, you have to give me $50. Now, mathematically, you should go for it. Many people won't because they want to avoid losing.
Understanding of loss aversion can help businesses and policymakers influence decisions. For example, some grocery stores in the Washington, D.C. area tried to decrease the use of disposable plastic bags by offering 5-cent bonuses if customers brought reusable bags. The policy didn't do that much. Later, they tried a 5-cent tax on plastic bags, and this time people used fewer disposable bags. This is loss aversion at work. The pain of having to pay 5 cents per bag was greater than the benefit of receiving 5 cents per bag. Another study analyzed how loss aversion can help incentivize employees. Researchers divided workers into 3 groups. The first was a control group that wasn't given a bonus. The second group was promised a bonus at the end of the year based on meeting specific goals. Participants in the third group were given the bonus at the beginning of the year and were told that they would have to pay it back if they didn't meet specific goals. The workers in the first and second groups performed about the same, but those in the third group performed significantly better. We just hate losing.
So behavioral economics has a lot to tell us. Accounting for emotion gives us a realistic view of how people actually behave.
We might not always be the rational actors classical economists believe us to be. For years, economics has had a blind spot, but behavioral economics helps us get a better look at how we make decisions. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next week.
Thanks for watching Crash Course Economics. It's made with the help of all these awesome people. You can help keep Crash Course free for everyone forever by supporting it at Patreon. Thanks for watching CFTDA.
So he's also nudging you there with the idea of the Patreon and the like, supporting the channel and giving you a subtle hint as to what he's actually wanting. So that's quite a nice breakdown there. There were a whole lot of questions that I was wanting you to answer with regards to it, but that's okay. You can look at the videos again. They are in the site. Now, when it comes to actually writing about behavioral economics, you've had some goes at it. There are some tricks that you can use. There are key themes in a way that you can then apply. And one of the best ways to think about it is with actual real life case studies. So the ones that you've seen about the ice cream, the ultimatum game is a classic experiment that has been used, and they used it at university. And there actually are some quite significant academic papers that were arguing as to whether the ultimatum game actually works or not. Okay, there are quite a lot of those that you can discuss, quite a lot of real life examples. The stickers with the directions and the social distancing, all of those sorts of things, the plastic bag charges, a charge versus a payment, all of those sorts of ideas are really good real-life examples of how you might use behavioral economics, in particular nudges, in order to encourage people, consumers, to do a certain behavior. Now, Econ plus Dahl is our next favorite person, and he does a good breakdown. Whoosh. Whoosh. He does a good breakdown about how to write with regards to behavioral economics. He's done quite a few, so he's also done one on the biases, he's done one on imperfect information, and this is his general one on behavioral economics. I'll play this here. It's not very long.
Welcome to this video where we consider a very exciting extension to economic thought over the last 20 years, the notion of behavioral economics. Behavioral economics disputes the idea that consumers are always rational and will always look to maximize their utility. Instead, behavioral economists will argue that emotional, social...
All right. So you see how he's laying it out? So we've got traditional economic views. What are we looking at? Behavioral economic views, what are we looking at? And then about the consumers and their decision making. So he's actually laying out the framework already as to what we're expecting you to be able to write like that. Yeah. Sorry? Yeah. Oh, at least I hope so. Let's see what happens. Sometimes it's the full screen thing that does the...
And psychological factors can play a very important role in influencing consumer behavior. Consumers are not always rational, utility maximizing robots, is the basic idea. Now, behavioral economics is very useful in adding to what traditional economics say. It's not a replacement at all, don't think of it like that. But where traditional economics can maybe let us down and explain all real-life scenarios about how consumers make decisions, behavioral economics can maybe fill those gaps and give us greater understanding of consumer decision. So let's break down and see where traditional economics can maybe let us down sometimes. Well, according to traditional economics, consumers are always rational and they will always look to maximize their utility when they make consumption decisions. That is, when they make decisions, they will first gather up all the information that's out there, then evaluate that information and weigh up all the costs and benefits of making a decision or buying a certain good or service, and then they'll take time to consider all of that and make a rational, utility maximizing decision. That is how a consumer would act according to traditional economic thought. But behavioral economics will say, well, hang on a second. That's not necessarily always how a consumer will make decisions. Consumers aren't necessarily always rational, therefore they may not always look to maximize utility. How? Well, rationality might be founded, behavioral economists might say, in three ways. Consumers don't necessarily have the time to do all of this and to make a satisfactory utility maximizing decision. Maybe the choice that's out there is just so large that to evaluate all the costs and benefits, to evaluate the pros and cons of consuming something or to buy something is just too much to ask for a consumer. There is just too much choice out there which overwhelms consumers. Maybe the information out there doesn't exist. Maybe there's a lack of information. Maybe there's asymmetric information. Maybe the information is not clear. Maybe the information is really, really complex. All the issues we talked about in my previous video of imperfect information can get in the way of rationality. So for these three reasons, behavioral economists will say that actually there is bounded rationality in some instances in the real world that can stop consumers maximizing their utility all the time. Once more, consumers are bounded by self-control, which can get in the way of taking decisions which will maximize utility. So even if a consumer has all the information and knows exactly what to do consumption-wise to maximize their utility, maybe their self-control gets in the way. So let's take sugary drinks, for example. A consumer knows that consuming so many sugary drinks daily is bad for them. It's going to rot their teeth, it's going to cause potential diabetes issues, all sorts going forward in the future, health related, which is not good for them. They want to cut down, but they can't. Their self-control gets in the way. Maybe they're addicted on sugar. The same argument we can make with nicotine and cigarettes, drinking cigarettes. The same argument we can use about going to the gym and healthy exercise. rational consumer knows what the benefits of exercise is and going for a jog every morning. You know what the benefits are. But something stops us doing that on a daily basis. We are bounded by our self-control, whatever reason that might be, addiction or otherwise. Our self-control is bounded, which prevents us all the time making decisions and maximizing utility. As a result, behavioral economists will say that for these two reasons, bounded rationality and bounded self-control, consumers will sometimes follow heuristics. Heuristics learned as just mental shortcuts or rules of thumb, simple ways of making decisions, which will provide a satisfying decision to be made. A decision where, okay, utility might be sacrificed, but a satisfactory outcome will be the end result in the end. A decision that's just easy for consumers to make. That will generate some utility, but maybe not the maximum level of utility. A satisfying decision. The heuristics, mental shortcuts, maybe it's a more appropriate way of looking at consumer decisions sometimes, if there is bounded rationality or bounded self-control. Right. But behavioral economists will say that more than this, there might be these emotional, social, and psychological factors that can influence decision making, known as cognitive biases. Stay tuned for my next video, where I'll talk about how those biases can influence decision making as well, differing from what traditional economics is. I'll see you on the next video. Thanks for watching this interactive video. See you soon.
All right, so there, as said, is it's Econ Pascal, and he does a full range of economic videos. They are A-level based, the majority of them, not IB. But what I like about what he doesn't always break things down quite the way I would do them, but he does tend to break things down really quite nicely. And it will be written, and it will be very visual, and it will be colors and all as well. And the fact that they're videos, so you can stop and pause and make your own notes, which is what you do. You don't just sit there passively absorbing it. You need to make your own notes on the basis of it. Okay. So that's that one. If I take it off of there for a minute, and I open up there. All right, now, ladies and gentlemen, I have a couple of things to say. The first one is that we are very nearly at the end of this particular unit. All right, which means that we will very soon be moving into the next unit, which has its own site, which has its own resources, vocabulary, terminology, etc., that you will then need to learn. Part of it will dovetail quite nicely with this topic, okay? Because of the ideas of behavioral economics, etc., but also the utility, etc., that we were discussing the other day. Okay, that will be there. That will arrive soon. That will arrive probably today. Okay, into the feed. I'll need to check this when it gets released. Okay, so key things to make sure that you are on top of: the terminologies. Okay, so your glossaries, etc. All right. The theories, the models, right? Understanding the applications, etc. Applications of behavioral economics as well, how that works. Now, making sure you've got all of that. If you do have questions, obviously you can ask those. If you work through some of the practice questions that I've posted and you want me to have a look and see what you've written, I'm happy to do that too. All right, don't expect me to give it back to you instantly. That's they're really not going to be able to happen. Yeah. But I will do my best to get it back as quick as I can. The next topic that we're moving into is a big one. All right, it is the market model. Now, some of you have done IGSI before and will be familiar with this. For others of you, the whole thing will be new. All right, even if you've done IGSI before. Believe me when I tell you, there will be a lot of new material that you will need to cover, right? Who did Eleanor? Did anyone do Eleanor Ostrom as their famous economist? No? You did?
I think I did. I
don't remember? Okay. All right. Eleanor Ostrom is going to be one of the theorists that we will be discussing in a little bit, but they are connected with this next unit that we do. No. Eleanor Ostrom, a famous economist.
Yeah, but she's American.
Yes, she's American. Yes. Yeah. So we're looking at the market model. Now, you have the year 13s have got a TOK day today, which must be incredibly exciting for them. You don't have anything coming up that I need to be aware of? You're just as per normal? Okay. So my plan then for next week, we're finishing at the normal time on the Friday, aren't we? Because we don't have half terms, not anything. Okay, so that's fine. So my plan that I've set aside for next week is that one of the things I would like to do on Friday, potentially, depending on how we're going, is to do some review work. So it might be that you drive potentially the review work. That might be a way to do it. So it'll be questions and answers, and and if you wanted to go through some of the questions that are in that practice thing that I've sent you, we can do that. Yeah. So that's what I had in plan for Friday. For Tuesday, I have a small section that will finish off this particular unit. Very small, very short. I didn't want to do it now because it'll take long. Right? And then we will be linking into the market model from there. Okay. Now, one of the things I would very much like you to be able to do is to have real life examples, please, wherever possible. Okay. So we've done behavioral economics. There were some real life examples discussed. There might be some others that you are aware of. So doing a small bit of research would be helpful. And finding real life examples of the cognitive biases, perhaps, of the different pricing decisions, right, that producers make, of the government policies that might be put into place. So you've got, if I can steal 5 minutes for you to do some independent research, you can discuss with each other, finding real life examples of behavioral economics, using the theories that we've discussed. Does that sound okay? Just 5 minutes. After the 5 minutes, desk cleaning devices, and it will be break time. Thank you. All right, so, But weird. Said, do I want to do the I said, no. Yeah. Yes. No, that's where we're moving to. Yeah. Now some of this, so if you scroll down a little bit, this bit here where it says critique of maximizing behavior, that's behavioral economics. All right, and it's HL. So that's why we've done that. And if you scroll up a little bit, it's going to connect to this topic, this section here. So all that you'll be thinking about for the pathway is these ones, scroll down a bit, and this one. Yes. But they are all kind of connected. That's the A and B. Well, for you, for the subject, you're going to do one paper, one question, A and B. A is 10 marks, B is
For this topic, 1.2. Or the entire exam is just
the entire exam.
1.2. So is it a writing question?
Yes. There was also a little bit. This is a smaller version of what you will face in a way, because the more papers you add, the more writing you get. One of your papers is a policy paper, but you haven't covered any
The best practice is so the best practice is just not to follow the syllabus.
Yes. Yeah, at this point. All right. I don't know if you have any particular questions. Team, can I link the video? Can't see the subs. Okay. Yes. The video on Skype. Hopefully. Right. There are question and answer sessions. So we have another one next week on Wednesday. So if when you're doing your work and you've decided that you'd like to do a meet and ask me some questions, remember Wednesday 1:25 you can talk. All right. Otherwise, you might want to have a great day. Get ready for your next lesson. All right. So as we'd say in the land of my birth, hey Corneda, let's have a fantastic day. Bye.